They told us the Lord's Prayer was simple words to be repeated, memorized, recited before sleep or in church pews. But beneath its familiar rhythm lies a code, an ancient vibration that was never meant to be spoken by rote. It was meant to awaken. When the disciples asked, "Master, teach us how to pray," they were not asking for words. They were asking for alignment. They had seen him go into the silence of dawn, the desert wind coiling around his robe, his breath steady like the pulse of the earth. When he returned, his eyes carried something of a stillness that moved mountains. And so he spoke, not as a rabbi giving a lesson, but as a mirror revealing the structure of creation itself. Our Father who art in heaven. Those words are not directed upward but inward. The heaven he spoke of was not a distant realm but the luminous space at the crown of your being. The invisible field where thought becomes form. Heaven is consciousness. The Father is source. And you are the bridge between them. In Hebrew mysticism, the word Abba did not only mean father, it meant origin. The one who breathes life into all things, the pulse within every heartbeat. Jesus was pointing not to an external deity, but to the presence of that pulse within you. When you pray, he said, go into your inner chamber. This was not a command of privacy. It was an initiation. The inner chamber was the holy of holies within the human temple of your heart, where heaven and earth meet. Prayer then was not about asking. It was about remembering. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Here lies the mystery of manifestation, the alchemy of divine order. In Aramaic, the original language of Yeshua, these words carried a resonance more like, let the kingdom unfold through me as light unfolds through dawn. The kingdom is not arriving from outside, it is emerging from within. And when heaven and earth mirror each other, when thought and action align, when heart and breath move as one, the kingdom becomes visible in every gesture, every breath, every act of compassion. But that alignment requires surrender. It means releasing the illusion of separation, the lie that the divine lives elsewhere. The great deception was never the serpent in the garden. It was the idea that you were ever outside of the garden. As Jesus prayed, he was not speaking to a being in the sky. He was resonating with the light within his own form, the Christ, the anointed flame within flesh. The prayer was a method of attunement. Each line a frequency, each word a door. In lost gospels found in the desert sands, there are whispers that Yeshua would teach his disciples breath with each phrase. Inhale the divine, exhale the illusion. It was not performance, it was resonance. He was teaching them to speak creation into motion, as the Creator once spoke, let there be light. The first line, Our Father, awakens unity. The second, Hallowed be thy name, activates reverence. The third, Thy kingdom come, calls the divine into form. Each phrase builds the structure of consciousness layer upon layer until the one who prays becomes a living temple of light. When you speak it with awareness, the prayer shifts from sound to power. The vibration moves through the breath, through the spine, through the soul. Heaven begins to descend into earth not as thunder but as remembrance. But the church, over time, reduced it to ritual. Words mumbled by memory, the fire turned to ash. The mystery turned to doctrine, yet within those ashes the ember still glows, waiting for breath. Yeshua said, the kingdom of God is within you, and that is the forgotten key. The kingdom is not something you enter after death. It is the state you awaken to when you remember who you are. The prayer is the path to that remembrance. Each word is an echo of the original light that spoke creation into being. In the hidden writings of Thomas, there is a verse that reads, If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. This is the same truth encoded within the Lord's Prayer. To bring forth the kingdom is to bring forth the divine within. To withhold it is to live in exile from your own light. So tonight, if you whisper those sacred lines, do not rush. Let each word move like the tide, slow, alive, breathing. Feel the Father not above, but around you, through you. Let heaven be the space between each heartbeat. Let earth be your body, receptive and holy. Then the prayer is no longer a request, it becomes a revelation. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Do not merely repeat it, become it. For when you do, you no longer speak the prayer begins to speak through you. And that is where the real awakening begins. To know the Father, Yeshua said, one must first know the breath. Not the breath that sustains the body, but the breath that sustains the soul. When he spoke of the Father in heaven, he was not pointing to a distant deity seated above the clouds. He was describing a presence woven through the invisible breath that moves through all living things. In the sacred language he spoke, the Aramaic word for spirit and breath were one and the same, ruach. To the ancients, breath was not air. It was consciousness that made motion the pulse of the infinite entering time. Every inhalation was the Father descending into creation. Every exhalation was creation returning to the Father. This is why Yeshua often withdrew into silence. The desert was his cathedral, the wind his choir, the stillness between breaths, his altar. There he entered the space where the name of God could not be spoken, only breathed. When he said, "Hallowed be thy name," he wasn't teaching reverence for a word. He was teaching remembrance of a vibration. In the oldest mystery traditions, the name of God was not a title but a tone of the hum of existence itself. The divine name could never be contained in speech, only experienced in the rhythm of life. The Hebrew letters Yod, He, Vav, He, the tetragrammaton, were not meant to be pronounced. They symbolized breath, the in, the out, the pause, and the return. Every living being, knowingly or not, speaks the sacred name with each breath they take. Breathe in Yod, pause He, breathe out Vav, rest He. And thus the first prayer ever uttered by creation was not in language, it was in breathing. When Yeshua said, "Our Father," he was awakening his disciples to this mystery. The Father is the very breath within you. You do not need temples to reach him. Every inhale is a doorway, every exhale a communion. But humanity forgot. We learned to speak of God rather than with God. We learned to pray with our lips instead of our lungs. And so the living word became a dead language. Yet even now, in the silence between thoughts, the Father waits. In one of the hidden teachings passed through the Essene communities, there is a saying attributed to Yeshua: when you breathe without awareness, the world breathes you. When you breathe with awareness, you breathe the world that is the essence of sacred prayer. Not repetition, but participation. Not asking, but aligning. So when he prayed, "Thy will be done," he was not surrendering to fate. He was harmonizing his breath with the breath of the universe, becoming one current in the river of divine flow. Imagine this for a moment. Every cell in your body vibrates with the same intelligence that spins the galaxies. Every heartbeat is timed with the pulse of creation. The Father is not separate from you, the Father is breathing you. To feel this truth, sit as he sat, spine straight, eyes closed, palms open. Breathe in through the nose gently, like drawing light. Hold for a heartbeat, then exhale through the lips as if releasing a prayer you can't quite name. Do this 3 times. Now whisper, "Our Father." Feel how the words vibrate through your chest. That is the sound of the infinite remembering itself in human form. The sacred was never meant to be distant. The word holy means whole. Hallowed be thy name means may this breath, this moment, this being be whole again. Every prayer Yeshua taught was designed to return the divided mind to unity, to restore the rhythm between human and divine. That is why he said, before you ask, the Father already knows what you need. Because prayer is not about informing God, it is about returning to Him. And that return happens in the breath. The mystics who followed his secret path, the ones later called Gnostics, described this as the first remembrance. When a soul remembers that every inhalation is an act of divine participation, it can no longer live asleep. The entire world becomes alive again. The trees exhale what you inhale. The stars release the same light that shines in your cells. The rhythm of the cosmos and your own breathing are one continuum. The Father is not watching you. The Father is breathing you into being. This is why Yeshua never claimed ownership over his miracles. It is not I who do these things, he said, but the Father within me. The Father within. Not beyond, not above, within. The breath. When you become aware of that, even for a moment something shifts. You stop searching for the divine and start participating in it. Every act becomes sacred because every act becomes conscious. And then, without trying, you begin to pray the way Yeshua prayed, not to get something, but to become something. The prayer becomes the breath. The breath becomes light. The light becomes remembrance. Our Father, who art in heaven. And heaven, as he said, is within you. So the next time you pray, do not let the words pass through your lips like stones skipping on water. Let them sink. Let them breathe. The moment you do, you'll feel the living pulse behind the name, the sacred current between inhalation and exhalation. You'll realize that the Father was never lost. He has been here all along, whispering in every breath you take. Each line of the Lord's Prayer is a key, not a sentence to recite, but a doorway to walk through. When Yeshua gave this prayer to his disciples, he wasn't giving them a formula to repeat in fear. He was handing them a map, a spiritual technology encoded with the steps of awakening. Each phrase carries a vibration, a law, a mirror. The church kept the words, but the code within them was buried. Let us open it now, one line at a time. Thy kingdom come. To the ordinary ear, it sounds like a plea for a distant paradise. But to those who have eyes to see, it is a declaration. The word kingdom in Aramaic, Malkutha, means both realm and sovereignty. Yeshua was not speaking of a future event, but of an inner realization of the arrival of divine order within human consciousness. When he said, "The kingdom of God is within you," he wasn't speaking in metaphor. He was revealing a truth long preserved in the mystery schools of Egypt and the prophets of Israel. The kingdom is a state of being where the human will and divine will become one. To pray, "Thy kingdom come," is to say, let my inner world reflect the harmony of heaven. It is the alignment of the lower and the higher, the visible and the invisible. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. This is not submission. It is synchronization. In Hebrew thought, heaven represents the unseen world of spirit and earth represents the world of matter. When you pray this line, you are not begging for divine intervention, you are activating divine integration. You are saying, may the vibration of spirit manifest through my body, my actions, my words. Yeshua lived in that alignment perfectly. Every miracle he performed was heaven becoming earth. The invisible made visible through human vessels aware of their divine origin. The Essenes, with whom Yeshua was closely aligned, taught that when heaven and earth touch within a person, the Son of Man is revealed. This was the hidden meaning behind his title. The Son of Man was not a single being, it was the awakened state of humanity itself. Give us this day our daily bread. For centuries, this line has been read as a request for food or material provision. But in the language he spoke, Lakum, bread also meant wisdom, sustenance, or essence. He was not telling his disciples to ask for loaves. He was guiding them to receive spiritual nourishment each day, fresh from the source. This is why he later said, "I am the bread of life." He does. Not because he wanted to be worshipped as food, but because he became the embodiment of divine sustenance. To pray for daily bread is to ask, "Feed me with revelation, nourish me with remembrance, let me taste the truth that sustains the soul." The ancient mystics believed that true prayer is not about asking for more, but about awakening to the enoughness already present. The manna that fell from heaven was symbolic of this, a daily reminder that God meets you in the present, not in the past or future. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Here lies one of the most profound spiritual laws, the principle of energetic reflection. The Aramaic word for debt, hoba, also means error, weight, or imbalance. Yeshua was showing his disciples that forgiveness is not moral bookkeeping. It is energetic cleansing. When you release resentment, you free yourself from the weight of duality. The mind becomes light again and the soul begins to flow. The outer and inner mirror each other as you release others. The divine releases you. That is why he said, "Judge not, and you shall not be judged. Forgive, and you shall be forgiven." It is not a command. It is a law of resonance. Whatever you hold on to holds on to you. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. This phrase has often been misunderstood, as if God himself might lead us astray. But the Aramaic root of temptation, nisyona, means trial or illusion. Yeshua was teaching that our greatest temptation is the forgetting of who we truly are, identifying with the body and the ego instead of the spirit. To pray this line is to say, "Deliver me from the illusion of separation. Let me not fall asleep again to my divine origin." The evil he spoke of was not a demon outside, but the distortion within the shadow born of ignorance. To be delivered from it is to awaken to light. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. This final line, often considered an addition, was in truth the seal of the prayer, a remembrance that all things return to the One. Kingdom means sovereignty, power means divine energy, and glory means radiant presence. It is not flattery toward God. It is the final alignment of the self with the infinite. To recite these words with awareness is to complete the circuit of remembrance. The prayer begins with the Father and ends with the return to the Father. It is the cycle of creation, inhalation and exhalation, emergence and return, birth and resurrection. That is why the Lord's Prayer was never meant to be recited quickly or carelessly. It is a breathing pattern, a meditation, a path of embodiment. The ancient mystics taught that when spoken slowly with full awareness of breath, each line corresponds to a chakra, a gate of light within the human temple. Our Father. Crown. Hallowed be thy name. Third eye. Thy kingdom come. Throat. Thy will be done. Heart. Give us this day. Solar plexus. Forgive us. Sacral. Deliver us. Root. Thus the prayer is not a formula for words, but for awakening. It is the soul's map from division to unity, from forgetfulness to remembrance. So the next time you whisper these lines, do not pray as a beggar before a throne. Pray as a son or daughter of the living light, remembering what Yeshua came to remind you of, that heaven is not a place to go, but a frequency to live from. Heaven was never meant to be distant. When Yeshua spoke of the kingdom, he was not pointing upward, he was pointing inward. He said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you." Few words in history have been so misunderstood and so feared. For centuries, humanity has been taught to seek heaven as a reward after death, a paradise beyond the stars, reserved for the righteous. But Yeshua revealed a secret that threatened every structure of control. Heaven begins wherever remembrance begins. It is not a location, but a state of consciousness. When he said on earth as it is in heaven, he was describing a mystical fusion, the union of the visible and the invisible. Heaven is the unseen pattern of divine order, and earth is the field where that pattern takes form. Every thought, every act of love, every forgiveness ripples across that bridge. The ancients knew this truth. The Egyptians called it ma'at, the balance between the spiritual and the material. The Essenes called it the harmony of the two realms. In the East, it was the dance of Shiva and Shakti, spirit and matter entwined. But Yeshua brought it into a single prayer, a single breath where heaven descends and earth ascends until both become one. He was teaching not escapism, but incarnation. Not how to die, but how to live as heaven embodied. The Pharisees could not see it. To them, holiness was distant separation from the world, from the sinner, from the body. But Yeshua walked into the places they avoided. He ate with outcasts, touched lepers, and sat with the forgotten. Each act was a proclamation. Heaven belongs here too. When he healed the sick, he was not performing magic. He was revealing the original blueprint of what happens when heaven and earth align within a human being. His touch reminded the body of its divine design, its harmony with the source. Heaven on earth is not perfection. It is participation. It is remembering that everything is divine material, that even pain and shadow are part of the great alchemy. Yeshua never rejected darkness, he transformed it. The cross itself was the symbol of this union, the vertical beam reaching heaven, the horizontal stretching earth. Where they meet is the human heart. That is the secret. Heaven on earth begins in the heart. When Yeshua prayed, he did not beg, he breathed. Each inhalation drew in the unseen. Each exhalation gave it form. Prayer was not about words, it was about vibration. He said, "Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you lose on earth will be lost in heaven." This was not a metaphor. It was the law of resonance, when your thoughts, emotions, and actions move in harmony with divine will. Heaven reflects through you. But when you live in separation, fear, or resentment, the reflection becomes distorted. Heaven is never absent, only obscured. That is why he taught forgiveness so fiercely, not to free others, but to clear the channel between realms. Every grudge is a stone in the bridge between heaven and earth. Every release restores flow. The early followers of the Way understood this. In the secret gatherings of the Nazorians, prayer was not recited but embodied. They would breathe each line of the Lord's Prayer in rhythm with the heart, letting the words move through them like waves. On earth as it is in heaven was the moment of merging when breath, light, and love became one continuum. They said that when Yeshua prayed, his body glowed faintly with gold as if lit from within. The Greek word doxa, translated as glory, means radiance, luminosity. Heaven on earth is not just peace, it is light made visible through the awakened body. Even now, heaven is not waiting, it is whispering. Every act of compassion, every moment of awe, every silence between thoughts, these are the places it breaks through. The modern mind looks for heaven in the clouds. The awakened heart finds it in the breath. The mystics say that when you truly understand the Lord's Prayer, you stop repeating it. You become it. Your life itself turns into prayer. Your thoughts hallow the name. Your actions bring the kingdom. Your forgiveness restores balance. Your presence reveals the divine. Heaven on earth is not a prophecy. It is a practice. When you see a child laugh, heaven is there. When you forgive someone who hurt you, heaven is there. When you pause to feel gratitude for simply being, heaven is there. And when you remember that there is no separation, not between God and creation, not between the sacred and the ordinary, then you finally understand why Yeshua said the kingdom was already here. The prayer ends where it began, with remembrance. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory. It does not say will be. It says is, heaven is not coming, it has always been. We are the ones who forgot. And when we remember, when the breath slows, the heart softens, and the light within awakens, then heaven, once thought to be far away, rises again through human eyes. Heaven on earth begins the moment you see that there was never a line between them. When Jesus spoke of deliverance, he was not describing escape from an outer enemy, but awakening from an inner dream. Deliver us from evil, he said, not as a plea born of fear, but as a call to remember what was never truly lost. Evil in his tongue was not a monster in the shadows. It was forgetfulness, the veil that made the children of light believe they were bound in darkness. In the oldest tongue, the word for evil shares its root with to separate. It meant the moment a soul forgot its origin, and so, when the Master prayed, he was teaching the heart how to return to wholeness. He did not battle shadows, he unveiled them. He did not condemn the world, he transfigured it from within. The prayer was not meant to be recited, it was meant to be lived. Each line was a breath of remembrance, a step back toward the divine source. To deliver meant to awaken, to be drawn out of illusion and into the luminous truth. For as the psalmist wrote, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" The true deliverance was not from men or demons, but from the trance of separation itself. And this was the final mystery of his words, that the kingdom was not a place one entered, but a state one remembered. The moment the soul said, "Thine is the kingdom," it was reclaiming its original inheritance. Jesus never pointed toward the heavens above. He pointed toward the light within, the eternal realm that had never been defiled. "The kingdom of God is within you," he said. And this was the culmination of the prayer when the seeker becomes the founder. The ancients believed that each human carried a fragment of divine fire in their heart. To awaken it was to be delivered. When Jesus withdrew into silence, when he prayed alone under the olive trees, he was teaching this inner ascent. He entered the stillness not to be heard by God, but to dissolve the distance between man and God entirely. That stillness, that breath between thoughts, was the place of deliverance. And when he said, "For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory," he was not exalting an external deity, but returning all illusion of selfhood back to the One. The words were a spiral, not a sentence, a turning of the soul back to its source. Power was no longer domination, it was illumination. Glory was no longer pride, it was the radiance of truth unveiled. The final prayer was circular. It began with Our Father, a remembrance of unity, and ended with Thine is the kingdom, a surrender to the same unity rediscovered. The seeker who began in longing ended in recognition. The mouth that once pleaded now whispered in silence, "I am home." Deliverance, then, is not an act of rescue. It is the unveiling of the eternal within the temporal. To be delivered from evil is to see that evil has no roots in the divine. It is a shadow cast by misunderstanding, and when the light returns, the shadow dissolves. As John wrote, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness comprehends it not." This was the secret rhythm of the Lord's Prayer, a descent into the heart and an ascent back into light. Each line carved a path through illusion until nothing remained but the luminous center of being. When Jesus taught this to his disciples, he was not teaching words to repeat, but a movement of consciousness to embody. And in that movement, the human became divine, for the true deliverance is remembrance. The soul awakens, the veil lifts, and the breath that once called out to heaven realizes it was heaven itself calling all along.